The founder of Cowboys for Trump is no longer happy with Trump. Now, this was at a recent QAnon conference in Las Vegas, Nevada. A man named Coey Griffin. I thought that maybe it was like a typo or something, like Cody. No, it's Coey Griffin. Weird. But he decided to go after Trump for failing to deliver on some of his campaign promises. So what? Really, really worried about, for example, immigration or worried about the economy? No. Here's what he was worried about.
We supported President Trump because of his fight for justice as well. And for 4 years, we cried, lock her up, lock her up, lock her up. We know she's a criminal. What did the president tell us? If I was in charge of the law, you'd be in jail. Okay, Mr. President, you were in charge of the law for 4 years. At the end of your 4-year time, the only ones that were locked up were men like me and others like me that have stood by the president the strongest.
Okay, then. So now, a little bit of context. This guy's been charged with a misdemeanor for being on there at January 6th, of course, and has been offered by the Justice Department a plea deal, which so far he has apparently refused. Okay, so, you're going back to lock Hillary up. Oh, great. This was the big campaign promise that he is so upset about. I can't believe they didn't lock up my political opponent. Well, you can't actually do that. And by the way, even if he wanted to, because at least he definitely said that he wanted to, the president doesn't have the authority to unilaterally lock people up. That's just not what not what they can do. And by the way, it would be disastrous if a president had that power, because in a lot of places where presidents do have that power, well, those places happen to be dictatorships, where there is essentially complete one-party rule. Even if they say, oh, no, we got a democracy. No, we allow voting, but it's just for members of this one singular party or military junta or something like that. It would be a disaster, absolute disaster, to give a president that much power. And again, these are in places where there's lots of political corruption. Now, we have, of course, political corruption as well, so let's not minimize that. But, you also have dictators in other countries. For example, some of the recent leaders of these countries were locked up for one reason or another. Ukraine, Myanmar, Egypt, Uganda, Zambia, and Iran. Brazil also locked up Lula da Silva on phony corruption charges. Now, of course, thankfully he's free, and he's challenging Jair Bolsonaro, who is an openly right-wing fash. And so, good. I hope Lula wins. Lula Libre, all that stuff. But again, they do these things. They again, phony corruption charges. Always. This is what they talk about. Now, right-wingers look at that and they say, yes, because the only people that are corrupt are the ones that don't agree with me. Put them in prison. Lock them up. We don't like them. We don't like them. Well, if you do that, that's literal fascism. But there's a difference here, by the way. When a leader does actual crime, of course you should have punishments for them. So now, insurrection, or at least inciting insurrection, would appear to be a crime. But the far right, again, they don't actually care about this. Neither, of course, is Donald Trump, obviously. His entire thing at first was, by the way, tell the crazies what they want to hear, and that will lead me to getting money and power. Then, of course, his ego got in the way and started to believe his own bullshit. And, of course, we've all seen the stories where he would attempt to order people on his staff to do very illegal things. And they would tell him, I can't do those things. They are illegal. Now, good thing that he was a moron, that he is and was a moron, because he would forget about these things probably like a day later. Hey, go do this illegal thing. Sure thing, sir. Right on it. No, I'm not going to actually do that. And then a day later, he's like, what illegal thing? I didn't order anybody to do anything. I literally forgot. Too distracted. So, but anyway, so this whole story tells me two things, right? So for one, Cowboy Man over here, Cowboy Man and people like him are incredibly ignorant. They don't know how things work. And understand that they are ignorant politically. They're not very smart. They don't actually know how our government works. They don't know how it functions. And that's not necessarily an insult. There's a lot of people that don't understand how it functions. And by some design, it's difficult for the average person to learn the ins and outs in government. And so if you don't understand how everything works, it's totally fine. But like the other thing, though, is that the Constitution, and I'm going to explain this, right? The Constitution does not afford the president powers to lock people up unilaterally. Now, the right wing exploits that ignorance, that lack of knowledge, and the complexity of our political system in order to say, why isn't the president doing X? Why doesn't the president do this or that? Why didn't the president fix gas prices? Well, that's not something that he actually has the power to do. Again, going back to George W. Bush, I wish I had a magic wand for the low gas. Well, they don't have that. They don't have that ability to do so. And in fact, not really. What the president does doesn't really affect. Well, I can't say doesn't affect at all because taxes and things like that, and trade, etc. But he doesn't have a direct button where he could push to lower gas prices. And so that's one example of things that the president can't unilaterally do, right? And there are things that he can do. There are things that he cannot do. And so that's an important thing. It's an important distinction to point out. So now he can give pardons, the president can, but not put people in prison. So now the other thing here that this shows is that MAGA, not exactly about freedom. They don't really care too much about freedom. In fact, what they want is an authoritarian dictator in place, in power, in order to try to stop society from progressing, society from changing. Because these people don't want change, obviously. They don't want diversity, they don't want inclusion, they don't want brown or black people in power or positions of power, because at the end of the day, I believe that they think that they'll be treated the same way that they have treated them traditionally, i.e. badly. So they're like, oh my God, we know that we treated people badly. And that's, by the way, why we don't want critical race theory taught in schools, and for people to not know the history of what actually happened, and why we continuously try to rewrite history. Because if we lose power, we become a minority in our own country, then we're going to get treated very, very badly. That's what we're going to do. And so, that's what they're going to do, they think. So we're just going to prevent that from happening by lying and cheating and stealing, because instead of owning up to the past and actually becoming better people and changing with the times, they go full fash and try to get people in power who will punish their enemies and prevent any sort of progress. So that's why I worry about this. But look, it's a small amount of people, let's be honest. But I am worried that these small amount of people, when they get into power, they change the rules. They're already doing so. They're changing the rules. They're doing voter suppression. They're trying to lock more Americans out. And by the way, Americans are already apathetic about the political system as it is, because, and I can understand why, because look at the $3.5 trillion reconciliation package, for example. It started with 10 trillion, down to 6 trillion, down to 3.5. Now they're talking about 1.5 or 1.9, like 1.75 between 1.9. And this is old stuff that was supposed to help the American people, and negotiated down and down and down and down and down because of a few intransigent senators, Manchin, Sinema, Bob Menendez, and others who are not at all interested in, taxing the rich or doing anything about climate change, addressing that, or just overall helping regular Americans. And so people are understandably apathetic of the political system because it isn't serving them. And that just helps the right wing even more, so they can lock more and more people out of that system and turn America into a further right-wing authoritarian dystopia. It is incredibly scary. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a like and share with your friends. You can subscribe and help out the channel by becoming a patron. It's patreon.com/Jeff Waldorf, or you can become a channel member as well by hitting the join button below.